I have my 3 soil samples here from Mars, and I'm going to try to determine if any of them contain life. So first, let's just take a look and see what's inside them. I'll hold them up if you can see that. Let me see if I can adjust the light a little bit. Maybe a little bit better. So it's light in color. You can see it's kind of a tan, almost white color. Looks really granular. It feels, I don't know, just feels kind of like really fine sand. And I'm gonna smell it. It doesn't smell like anything. So that is sample 1. Put that here. I'll keep the lid by it. Sample 2. Open it up. It looks similar. Looks like there's a little bit of kind of chunky, almost yellow stuff on top. And I'm gonna smell this one. It almost has a bit of a sweet smell to it. Not earthy for sure. Put that one down. And then sample 3. Let's see. So this one also looks a little bit different. Similar in color. Feels kind of the same. It has little, I don't know, kind of, you can see them on top, like roundish things that are slightly darker, browner. And this one really doesn't have a smell, so similar to the first one with the smell. So I'm gonna add water to each of these. Really, life as we know it requires water. And I just know based on my background knowledge that sometimes living things like bacteria can go dormant in long periods of dry spells, and same is true for like seeds with plants. They can be dried for a really long time, and then if we add water, sometimes that just gets them going again. So I'm gonna add a little bit of water. So this is just tap water, using a pipette to each of these samples. And so sample number 1, I'll add 2 pipettes. Gets a little cloudy, and I don't hear anything. I don't smell anything. Let me put the lid on so we can look at it sideways. Give it a little stir. Nothing, I'm not seeing a lot happening here. Keep the lid off so we can see it better. And the water just kind of all seems to be on top with the granular stuff at the bottom. I'll do the same for sample 2. So I'm hearing some fizzing. Still hear fizzing. And I do see some bubbles. So there's some fizzing that's happening. But for the most part, besides those bubbles and the fizzing, the water's staying on top and that granular stuff is on the bottom. The liquid has turned slightly yellow, which you can see. It's still popping a little bit. So that's interesting. We are getting a reaction. We'll come back and visit that. And here's my 3rd sample. Okay, give it a little stir. So, not really hearing anything. I'm definitely getting a smell from this. It almost smells bready. And the water has actually turned really foggy. So the liquid is still on top, but if you can see that, it's really foggy. So we'll sit this down and let's revisit the others and see if anything has happened over the couple minutes. So sample 1 looks to be the same. There are some air bubbles in there, but I don't think they're coming from anything inside there besides just trapped air. And still doesn't have a smell, and I'm not hearing anything. Let's see, sample 2. Not hearing that crackling anymore. There are still some air bubbles kind of trapped in there, but it doesn't look like it's actively forming any. And it really doesn't smell like anything. And let's see, sample 3. Still foggy. I'm not hearing anything. And there are some air bubbles that might have just been air that's trapped in there. So I'm going to leave the camera on these for a couple minutes and we'll have a close-up look again in, how about 5 minutes? It's been about 5 minutes, so I want to revisit these and see if there have been any changes. So number 1, it looks the same as it did 5 minutes ago. The water is just on top with the like granular stuff at the bottom, and the water is still really clear, you can see. 2, this one also pretty much just looks the same as it did 5 minutes ago. Again, the water is on top. It's clear, it's just a little bit yellow. I don't really see any changes from 5 minutes ago. And 3 seems to have kind of gotten a little thicker. There's kind of a slurry at the bottom of the container. That water is definitely foggy as it has been before. And I have noticed some new air bubbles. I think I kind of popped them as I've been moving these around. But there seems to be some bubbles forming a little bit under the surface. I don't know if you can see those. All right, so I'm gonna leave those probably for the next hour or so, and I'll revisit them and see if we have any changes. It has now been about an hour, so let's take a look at these samples. This is sample number 1. Turn my light back over here. And I'm looking at this. The water on top is still very clear. There are a couple air bubbles trapped underneath there, but I don't see any active bubbling. And the granular stuff's at the bottom. Sample number 2, again, that water on top is really clear, maybe a little bit yellow. There are a couple air bubbles trapped, but I don't see anything actively bubbling. And sample number 3, wow. So there's a bunch of really thick foam on top of that liquid, and it appears to still be bubbling. So new bubbles continue to form. And there's still kind of some sludge at the, thicker stuff at the bottom, but the water underneath that foam is really foggy. All right, so hopefully you have enough evidence now that you can fill out your claim evidence reasoning table. So you're making a claim on whether or not any of these 3 samples contain life. You're going to present the evidence you're using to make that claim, and then describing the reasoning behind like how that evidence is related to the claim. So think of the reasoning as sort of like your thought process of why each piece of evidence helps you come up with that claim.